All right, welcome to the Radical Hospitality Podcast. Today, we've got none other than Nathan St. Cyr and his business partner, Michael Russells. They are the founders of Malama Capital. They currently own a real estate portfolio valued at $30 million. Michael and Nathan are currently documenting their journey of building an award-winning $400 million hospitality company. They're also focused on helping real estate investors on how to purchase and operate hotels in less than a year on their podcast, The Hotel Investor Playbook. Welcome, fellas, to the Radical Hospitality Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Yeah. So good to have you guys. I've had the pleasure of getting to know you guys a little bit through Rich Summers' mastermind group, and hung out with Michael a little bit about at the Boutique Hotel Con. So you guys are doing some amazing things in the hospitality world, and it's been really fun to get to know you guys a little bit. I'm looking forward to diving in some of that today. So I want to start out. Let's just dive right into it. You guys are currently have finished up a really cool hostel, $800K purchase to an $8 million valuation on a hostel conversion. Like, how the heck do you do that? What was the process like? Kind of back me up a little bit and see how you got into this.
I think first of all, it starts with number one, recognizing opportunity. We did this and we're able to do that because we took action during COVID. So that when we look at the approachable side of the real estate, we have found that with this vision that we have and this business model, that hostel assets tend to be more approachable to start. But then secondly, that when you amplify that piece with timing, and there weren't a lot of people in the midst of the heart of COVID that felt like, wow, what a great idea to go and purchase hospitality that's completely shut down with shared accommodations. There were a lot of people that said that we were nuts, but we believed that the world would solve this issue and that we could really take advantage of an opportunity. So that $800,000 is the original purchase. And then, like you said, in a short amount of time, we were able to go from knowing zero about operating a hostel to, in 2.5 years, becoming the best number one small hostel in North America. Mike has had a huge impact on our business. He's an unbelievable executor. We didn't know a lot, but we dug in and we started really looking at things out of a different lens. We started looking at things from the standpoint of what are our standards? What is it that we want to accomplish? And we really went from there. We get told all the time, you guys are not hostel guys.
So what was this space originally? Did you guys purchase a hostel and revamp it, or was it some empty space? Like, what did you guys start with?
If we were to rewind how we actually got there, we had the vision in 2018, and that came from Mike's background in short-term rentals. We'd been colleagues for over 10 years. I had recruited Mike. I was running a high-performing sales team here on Maui. And Mike came and worked with me for over 5 years. And we were very, very aligned. We both had two goals that we wanted to accomplish. We were both looking for financial freedom. And then we were both looking to accomplish generational wealth in a way that we could do it better, the two of us, versus just going off on our own. And because we were both aligned with this concept of financial and time freedom, number one, and then number two, generational wealth building, it just really set up for the perfect partnership. And because Mike had this background in pivoting out of long-term rentals, which we both have been investing in real estate for 20 years plus, he saw the opportunity back in 2015 because we're on Maui, to capitalize on short-term rentals. And he did. He went in, not only did he buy one, but he purchased two. But with regulations, restrictions, all of the things that can occur in the short-term rental market, he recognized, look, I'm crushing it from a cash flow standpoint so much that he was able to walk away from his full-time job, left me behind. And we still had a plan to go do something big together, but he was out there with time and financial freedom, surfing every day and hanging out. But look, he got bored. And the one piece that he recognized in this was that although the short-term rental space provided him that cash flow and that freedom, that there was also risk, that with regulations and restrictions. And then when you take that concept and go, and from a generational wealth building, it doesn't matter how successful I am in this space. My property is worth whatever my neighbors sold for. It's not based on the income approach like commercial real estate. In that process of us deciding we wanted to go do something big, we looked to the commercial space where we could go, and we started digging into multifamily. Started looking right here in our backyard for apartment buildings, and the first property that we called to inquire about, although it had gone under contract that day, there was a little note that said that it had been previously run as a hostel. And we were like, what's this? And as soon as we asked this question to the real estate agent, he was a good agent. He recognized they've got interest there. And so he started sending us all this information on the hostel market in Asia and all of this content. Then we started looking in, and very shortly after doing some research, we noticed that we were onto something. And in fact, we really believed that we had hit the jackpot.
I love that you guys kind of started in short-term rental. I think there's a lot of the audience that probably that is kind of the introduction, the kind of gateway drug into hospitality is short-term rental. My wife and I have been doing that, and now we've gotten rolled into this boutique hotel space. With short-term rentals, I feel like it can be a solo sport. You can get in there, you can buy one, you can figure it out. It is not the case I'm finding on, hostels, hotels, these bigger projects. Like, you really got to build a team to do it, or, and probably starts with a partnership. How did you guys figure out what your key roles and strengths were in your partnership? How has that dynamic been playing out as you guys been building this team?
I want to touch upon a couple points that you made, and Zeke, I promise I'll circle back. But
all right,
you talked about that we recognized that there was an opportunity with the short-term rental market, and that there was a lot of cash flow there, but the limiting aspect of that was that you can't really necessarily build generational wealth. You can build tremendous cash flow, but the wealth building, it was hard, at least in my case, to see, because to Nathan's point, your home, your residential home, which you're maximizing its use by short-term renting it, you're getting the most value from a rental perspective, but its tradability, if you were to exit, if you were to sell it, it's limited to whatever the comparable value is of the properties within your neighborhood. And so when Nathan and I were spitballing back in 2015, 16, 17, we were working together, we kept coming across this opportunity of like, cash flow. That's what would be nice, to be able to exit our W-2 job, right? Our full-time job, is we need the cash flow. But then when we started digging into multifamily, because that tends to be one of the asset classes where there's the most information, there's a lot of education. Wherever you go, people are promoting multifamily, which I still believe that, hey, that's a great asset class to invest in. But for me, it wasn't really that exciting. You talked about the gateway drug. It really is a drug. Like, when you get into short-term rental investing, not only is it profitable from a cash flow perspective, but it's fun, man. It's really fun.
Who talks about running a rental, and changing toilets out as being fun? But short-term rentals and hospitality, like, there's a lot of cool things you can do, design, people-wise.
Well, you're an architect, right? So like, you're a perfect example of how you can have a vision and you can take something that you're clearly passionate about and you can apply it. Well, with multifamily, it's pretty cut and dry. Like, okay, we're going to put in a kitchen, we're going to put in a bathroom, we're going to try to make some improvements, and it's kind of boring. But when you can go and create an atmosphere or an experience that people are looking forward to, they're working and they're saving so that they can go and have an experience on vacation with the people they love. When you curate that experience, it is incredibly fulfilling. And so when I got started with short-term rentals, to me, that was, and Nathan calls this the passion project. And I think that this is a really important point, and it relates back to, okay, well, why hostels, right? The thing about a hostel for us, it's not just a cheap place to stay. The distinguishing factor, I believe, which has made us very successful, is we are hyper-focused on the guest experience. And albeit it's at a lower price point, so maybe there, are things that are not as luxurious as you're going to find if you're going to go stay at a Four Seasons hotel. But on Maui, Nathan said the asset was very approachable. There is a significant barrier to entry, at least in Hawaii, to go buy a hotel. We weren't going to go and spend, I think the minimum hotel, price would be at minimum like $25 million. right out of the gate, for us to go from working W-2 jobs, getting started in short-term rental, to go buy a $25 million hotel was not realistic. And so when we came across this hospitality asset, right? When we came across this opportunity to purchase a hostel, which had a much lower barrier to entry, and we could not only reap the rewards from a financial perspective, but then go pour into it with our passion and pour in our creativity to go create experiences for our guests. For us, it felt like an excellent blend of just being creative and being passionate and being also profitable. So it was a very exciting prospect from the beginning. We didn't know how to do everything day one. We kind of had to figure it out, but we at least knew that, hey, if we got started with this, we're not going to go run this as your typical low budget place to stay. We're going to go and pour into it, make it really nice. We're going to do something different. And we really led like a very design forward type of experience and property. And so Nathan said, hey, you guys aren't, people say all the time, you're not hostel guys. That was to our advantage. We went and created this amazing experiential property. And yes, people come because it's cheap, but man, when they leave, they don't remember how cheap it was. They remember the people that they met, the beaches they went to with other like-minded folks, and the relationships they built by staying with us. That's like taking short-term rentals and just scaling it to a greater effect, whether it's a hostel or it's a hotel. That to me is this most exciting part of it.
We were on a call the other day, and I think it was Travis Chambers with Outpost X was talking about how luxury hotels is like the most overused theme there is in hospitality. People are desperate for experiences. Whether you are selling a low end or high end or medium end, it's that experience oriented adventure that people are looking for in spaces, and that does translate into a great ROI or great business. As an architect, one of the things I love is like you can pour into your passion and your design. You're not dealing with your multifamily developer saying, well, can we trade that trim for one that's $1.20 cheaper? There's a real ROI for creating a great unique space and experience for people, which you guys are obviously doing that, crushing it. Yeah, you promised me, Michael, to come back to my original question.
A partnership, our partnership. Yeah, absolutely. So promise, I will deliver on that promise right now. So yeah, we have a lot of complementary skill sets. Nathan is an incredible leader, and in our business, we're not staff light, right? We've got a lot of moving parts. We got a big team. There are models out there where, you can set up self check-in and you can kind of have a business model that is geared around being efficient with labor, lowering your cost and that nature. And the hostel is the exact opposite of that, right? It's all about the social experience. And so in order to curate that on a constant basis, we got to have staff. We have 24-hour reception. We have tour guides. We call them Aloha ambassadors, people that are constantly providing experience for our guests, whether it's making pancakes in the morning, serving coffee, leading karaoke nights. There's always something that is immersive going on at our property. And so we have a large staff, and Nathan has been incredibly effective at inspiring our staff so that they can go be the best version of themselves. And that transfers to within our culture to everyone that works for us. That's quite frankly a component of the business that I feel like Nathan has really excelled at. And it complements my skill sets very well, which, I get into details. I would say Nathan would lean more towards the visionary and I'm more towards the integrator. And so it's a nice balance where I really enjoy looking at systems and process and, all the things that are figuring out the nuances of how stuff works, like kind of the blocking and tackling, oftentimes more of the boring stuff, but I dig it and I like it and it's important. So I would say from that aspect, to give you just kind of a rough overview, that's how we work very well together in order to operate a business that is like this thriving ecosystem of people constantly coming and going and staff turnover that is, let's face it, it's frequently happening. So there's constant training and onboarding, and all of that requires human capital, which Nathan has done a nice job of curating.
What skills does someone bring to the table when you're creating a partnership? Because although Mike is being very specific right now and talking about one component of our business, which is operations, but our goal has never been to run operations. Our goal has always been to scale. And so when we look at, we had to go in and dig in and become experts in team building and in integrating processes and all of the things that, we were able to utilize each other's skills to get us to the place where we became an award-winning hostel. Both of our strengths, I think, without question, contributed to that. But now it's really it's the bigger picture. Those skills translate all across the business, right? So if you look at, there's operations, but then you also have, you have acquisition for us to grow, and then you've got all of these different marketing components, right? You have raising capital and funding. And so when we look at those, as you build out, there's things that constantly have to happen. We have to continuously be able to identify the who's that are going to, number one, buy into our vision, be aligned with us, and then be able to execute. And then secondly, in each one of these new areas that you go into, all right, we're stuck with where we're at. Now we got to go grow. So now we have to dive into raising capital. Well, you need to be able to not just have the vision of, okay, well, this is what you do. Then you have to be able to execute each one of the steps of, hey, this is what it's going to take. So I might be able to see it very clearly. Oh, this is what we need to do. And here's who we can use. And here's how we can do it. And then Mike's like, yeah. And then this is how we're going to do it. We're going to go, and he's going to break it down to the granular level to really go in and dig in and be like, this is the process. Okay, that's great. Now let's go put this thing together. And in everything that we've done, it doesn't matter if it's operations, if it's raising capital, if it's acquiring the next property, if it's marketing, both of those things that are needed along every step of the journey. And so I think that it's been really critical for our growth to be able to have vision, leadership, the ability to find the who's to help us, and then the freaking taking all of that stuff and then creating the how and the processes and the systems. And then once those get put in place, then it's like, okay, now we're moving on to the next thing. We've been really successful at that.
I think the entrepreneurial journey, whatever business it is, hotels, architecture firm, it's a lot like, like the tree back here. Like, you have a vision of what it all will be when it's built out. In the early phases, there's 50 hats that as the entrepreneur you're having to wear. And as you move up those trunks, then you get to take a few off and you put them on a few more teams, and then you take a few out. And, ultimately you need to kind of know what that built out vision is going to look like, so you can subdivide. So we've got marketing, we've got finance, we've got, programming. You just have to define them, even if you're the guy wearing them all in the beginning, so that when you start to hire, you know what hats you're taking off and who you're assigning them to, and I think that changes depending on where you are in, that journey of build out. Where you guys are at right now with your hostels, what does that kind of look like in terms of how you guys have said, all right, here's our key functions, and here's the key hats that we're putting on?
We hired a business consultant, Rick English, with Up Advisors. And so, he's taken that concept of EOS, the Entrepreneur's Operating System, and he's helped us really define every function that goes into each one of these 4 pillars of our business, right? So in doing so, it's like, all right, there's a defined function, and then there's an owner of that function. And so somebody's constantly owning. So it gives us that map of what is it that we need to focus on, and not just for right now, but ultimately for, where we're heading to go and hit that big vision. And that's been such an incredible piece to answer the question of how does that relate and translate into the hostel operation side. Well, I would say that we spend about 3 hours a week, each of us, on hostel operations. I mean, to think that we were spending 80% of our time on figuring out how to operate at a award-winning level with our hostels to, okay, now we have a team in place that we can depend on to go and run this, and we invest 3 hours a week with multiple properties. And look, I believe that as that grows, we are very, very, very close on adding another flagship property right now. Part of what we do through the Hotel Investor Playbook is we're documenting this journey, right, of each one of these steps. And we're in acquisition phase right now. We're really close. And that's going to be fun to take people through the journey of what does that look like then when you add that next property? How does it affect the team? How does it affect each one of these function components. But I believe I can see that it actually gets a little bit easier the bigger that you are, to be able to have the right who's in place to go and do ultimately what you need to do within each one of these components. So we're in that process right now, that transition, but I feel like we've done a heck of a job creating the infrastructure that's going to allow us to, and identifying what is needed, that's going to allow us to have an awesome transition into this growth. Because like Mike said in the beginning, we're on our journey to create a $400 million company, and that entails 4,000 beds. And right now we're at 150, but we could be, in a very short amount of time, we could be at 400 to 500 in the matter of days. So we're excited.
Congratulations. All right. You mentioned 4 pillars of the company. Love to hear what that is a little bit. And then, for those of us that are like are a couple steps behind, getting ready to start a company to operate some of this, maybe a little more granular, what does that actually look like in terms of, the team that you should be putting in place?
So when you're going to grow, the path to growth, everything's going to fall under one of these 4 pillars: acquisition, funding. So anything that has to do with when you acquire that next property, how's it going to be funded? All of the different options as far as where that capital is going to come from the types of financing that exist to capital raising. And again, if you don't have the financial capacity to do this self and your capital raising, that doesn't happen overnight. It's a big one, right? There's a lot of infrastructure that gets put in place and a lot that has to happen to capital raise. Operations. And that's the one that we really, for the past 3 years, really dug into. We were determined to become expert operators so that we could really feel like, as we grow this hospitality company, we know every detail of the business, instead of being dependent on someone else to operate what we go and purchase. And not that we'll never hire an operator, maybe in a different asset within hospitality, but we want to be experts so that we know who and how to audit them. Has been a critical part of our path. So operations is the 3rd pillar. And then the 4th pillar is marketing. And marketing comes into play in both the operational side of your property, your asset, on how to market it, but it's as equally, if not more important, for the marketing of your personal brand and your credibility and your ability to go and raise capital. So really, you're going to see marketing flow over all 3 of those. By marketing, it's going to help you acquire. Marketing is going to help you raise capital and your funding and your credibility with banks. And marketing is going to help you operate at the highest effectiveness, efficiency in your operations.
For operations, you had a little bit of STR experience, but this is a whole different game. Did you guys take somebody else's playbook to learn from, hire a coach, or did you guys just dive in and start figuring this out?
We've invested tremendously in hiring key personnel consultants that can provide value for specific areas of our business starting from day one. So if we're going to hone in on operations, right? Everybody, it seems like a lot of the focus that we see and hear as it relates to getting started in boutique hotel investing or investing in hospitality in general is the excitement and the drama of finding the deal, and maybe perhaps some content about raising capital and raising money from private investors. But those components ultimately land you the asset, and then it's sitting in your lap, and it's like, well, then what? And there's very little information out there on the nuances of like, well, how do you get prepared to operate your own asset? Or how do you know how to hire, if you go and you hire a property manager that will, manage your hotel, well, what do you need to look for? What are the metrics that you need to evaluate to make sure that this thing is operating effectively? And so this is a very weighted question because, heck, man, there's a lot that goes into this, and a lot of it is not as exciting to talk about, but it's incredibly important. We just did an episode on our podcast about this, and I was blown away because I told Nathan after we recorded, I go, oh my gosh, this is probably going to be so boring. Should we even release this? Is anyone even going to find value in this? And all of a sudden, ding, ding, ding. After it got released, people are like, oh my God, I loved your episode on operations. I'm like, really? we're just talking about like the nuts and bolts of how our business works. It's not that exciting. Like we're not talking about finding the deal, talking with brokers, like raising money. Like we're just talking about like, oh man, how do we be a little bit more effective with like getting our laundry solution in place? Like what kind of door locks do we use? Like all this stuff that's like, but it's important, right? Because ultimately it affects your bottom line. And so, like you said, we went through a whole episode on it, and we could probably do like a 3-day weekend workshop on this. Back to the point about hiring consultants. So Nathan said, hey, look, we hired a business coach, and this business coach, he helped us implement EOS or a version of it, which we have really lived by. And this has been game changing for us because we've been able to systemize our business. That statement that he made that, we only work on our business, or I should say in our business, for about 3 hours a week, that's critical. Because if you want to grow or you just want your life back, like, sure, there are people that maybe want to buy something and live immersed in it, and they find joy of just like being in their business day to day. That's not me. Like, I want to grow and I don't want to be stuck in the minutia. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I want to have a team that is responsible for that. And there's a big step that has to occur from having that idea or vision to actually executing, like, okay, how do I have processes in place? So implementing the steps that we learn from EOS. There's a book by, I think it's Gino Wickman. It's called Traction. He is the so-called creator of EOS. Well, I listened to the audiobook and I dozed off like 4 or 5 times. I couldn't get through it. It was like, I couldn't see myself going and implementing that stuff all on my own. So hiring an expert or hiring a business coach that had experience already, like with the template and the systems and everything already in place. And he just said, okay, let's take what you're doing and let's plug it into the system. It was incredibly valuable for us because we were able to streamline accountability. And so there's an accountability chart that we use that's got everyone's role within our company, and then all the different functions of what needs to occur for each department to be run effectively. And we plugged people in, and we identified, well, every single function of our business. And then we assigned to the top of the category someone that would be accountable in that role for making sure all of those functions are executed. In fact, if you go to our website, the Hotel Investor Playbook, we have a link there. It's the accountability chart. You can actually look at ours. You can see our exact accountability chart, like just the way that we had it all spelled out. Save yourself a lot of time. If you want to just look at it, borrow it, whatever, you can apply it. But at least gives you a very clear idea of what all the different functions are of a hospitality business in general in relation to operations, but hiring the strategic people. So I know I'm going on a tangent here. I'll try to be like, I'm the one that tells Nathan to be concise, and here I am rambling, but hiring people that we could plug and play. From day one, we hired, in our case, a hostel consultant, someone who had experience running hostels. He was able to come in and operate our business and give us guidance on who we should hire and what different websites we need to be on and how to run the front desk. And it was critical just as a starting point. We hired a business coach. We've hired a fractional CFO to help us with our financials to make sure that we're running everything effectively. We've hired, a variety of coaches for specific parts of marketing. And all of this has been incredibly valuable. It takes money to make money, right? That expression. And in so our case, we've invested probably nearly $100,000 in coaching and mentorships and programs. But I think that it's necessary if you want to accelerate the learning curve to be able to implement these things faster and more effectively.
Now, I think you guys are really onto something, and I don't know if you had the intention of this or not with the Hotel Investor Playbook. I think a lot of us are looking for the playbook. I know in my business, when I've had growth, it's been when I've, found someone who's doing the thing I'm wanting to do well, and simply taking that and adapting it into my business. I got out of working the W-2 by learning how to do sales and marketing as an architect, joined an architecture marketing group. Who knew it? You need clients. So, figured out how to get clients and leads. For hotel, operation portion of it. I'm glad you said you fell asleep during the Traction book. I've tried to read that a few times. It's sitting on my nightstand. I get halfway through. I'm like, why does everybody keep recommending this book? It's awful. But it's because it's not the specific thing that I'm trying to dial down a playbook for. And if you say, okay, here is the playbook for the piece that I'm trying to do, whether it's, operations of hotels or learning how to raise the capital of hotels, and then people could step into that I think that's the secret sauce. It's like, okay, you're going to have to adapt it to your own specific needs. But
Mike is saying, well, we hired the business coach, but what the business coach did is he just helped us organize it.
Yeah.
Right. So what we had done is put 3 years into creating. Everything comes down to one of two things. Every single thing comes down to one or two things: a person or a process. That's it. Right. So we spent 3 years in building the right people and the right processes. And then the business coach came in and helped us go and organize that. So when Mike says, oh yeah, well, we have our EOS operations, it's called the accountability chart on our website. When he's saying that, that's 3 years of work that went into that. It really
so take them up on this. If they're giving away their 3 years worth of work to figure out the playbook, go and download that. Or I'll link to it in the website here as well on the show notes.
Yeah, but that is my point. People now in today's world, you can go and expedite, time. Like Mike said, we've spent $100,000 this past year in masterminds and communities, in hiring specialists and professionals and all of that. So you look, in today's world, the information is out there and you can go and lean into it and you can save yourself a lot of time and money. It's just this whole concept of this wave that is occurring where a lot of people are shifting from short-term rentals over into boutique hotel or experiential lodging, asset group. I call it the passionate asset class, right? They're shifting over into this. There isn't as much information out there about what, like Mike said, the operational side, because people just aren't that far yet. As time goes on, some of that, there will be more easily available information. But we spent 3 years on effort so that we could go and build out that part of our business.
And you feel like having that operation now built into your business will allow greater scalability versus hiring operators and, focusing on acquisitions and capital raising?
We have this down to people are motivated by different things, and growth is one of them. And so when we look at our team is we've got a bench. We've got
hungry.
We do. We've got a bench of people. They know our vision. They know that there's going to be opportunity to grow. We have to grow because one of the reasons that they're in the positions that they are and they're willing to work as hard as they do and as long as they do is because they know that, look, this company is going to grow and there's going to be more positions that open in other places. And I can go from here. I can go from an assistant manager to, I could be an area general manager over multiple sites. And they know this. To answer your question, we are extremely well positioned for growth. We've set ourselves up that way.
Yeah. And so as you're looking for other hostels, what makes a good hostel location? What's kind of your buy box that you guys are looking for?
Our goal is not to just be limited to hostels. For us, the hostels became an option because, as mentioned previously, it was the low barrier to entry to be able to purchase undervalued assets and then make improvements to them and improve the business model and then be able to capitalize on massive gains. We're open to all different types of hospitality assets. As it relates to the hostel, though, specifically, we need places where there's a lot of travelers. So our first 2 locations in Hawaii, we've got, for obvious reasons, a lot of people come here and the cost of accommodations are very high. So it creates pretty obvious solution for a lot of folks from a financial perspective. They can come stay with us. And so building the brand here in Hawaii is a great start to gain brand awareness. But as we scale to the mainland, we need to find locations where there's a high volume of travelers, like urban locations. If someone is considering purchasing a boutique hotel in more of a rural submarket area, that might work well for the hotel model. With a hostel, if we've got 20 rooms and we put bunk beds in there, that's 80 people. 4 people, let's just say for simple math, there's 4 people in a room. We have different room sizes, but different room categories. But let's just say that in order to fill 80 beds, we got to have a lot of travelers. So that limits us from the hostel model to urban locations. In fact, so Zeke, I was in Denver, right? Not too long ago. Well, that was one of the challenges. There's a few great hostels in Denver. And unfortunately, that's the supply there in Denver. If any more hostels were to go and enter that market, I feel like they would be oversupplied. That's one of the areas where we got to be careful to make sure that we find a market. It's like the perfect mix of a high amount of travelers and a low supply of other hostile competitors. And Denver didn't work for us in that. In my opinion, it was a little bit too risky from that perspective. But if we look along the West Coast, for example, our buy box might be properties that are, under 10 million, 20,000 square feet or less in urban locations within proximity to public transportation. San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, to name a few. Seattle is a location that would work. And that's just on the West Coast. We can also look along the East Coast. But in general terms, we can buy properties that might be overlooked by others because maybe the makeup of the footprint of the building in terms of restrooms and things would require a lot more capital investment. But for us, we could take dormitory style accommodations and we can have shared restrooms, shared kitchen facility. And so hypothetically, we could take an office, for example, that might be overlooked by a lot of people. And that would be a relatively easy conversion for us to convert it into a very profitable hostel.
I mean, that's when you're talking about exactly what I'm thinking. I mean, we have a huge office oversupply around the country, and even in like a lot of these like key high urban areas that need to be repurposed. We're working on a hotel conversion from an office in Denver right now, and it's got open web structure, so all of those toilets and plumbings are running through, and we're doing it. It's fine, but it's a little ugly. A hostel would be perfect because you could set up a central, bathroom location. Potentially, you could find a really great asset. There's a lot of, Class A office spaces in prime locations, urban areas. So ideal. Did you look at Boulder at all? Just curious. That seems like, kind of high dollar market up there. It's got a college with a lot of kids coming in, might be a better spot even than Denver, for that kind of.
For me, there's a part of it is a little bit of personal interest, right? If you're going to have an asset somewhere and you're going to pour into it, you kind of want to be passionate about where it's located. Yeah. So when you said Boulder, I'm like, oh, that sounds great. I'd love to go visit there. I don't know much about the financial metrics, but in basic terms, like if you look at Vail, for example, that would be a location where you get a lot of demand and you have high cost for travelers. So from a hostel perspective, it could be a great location.
Flip side, like you're taking a high cost area and by adding some density to it, able to then make it work. So a lot of these areas that don't pencil out, condos first, hotels second, then maybe down to hostel by dividing it down, get a number that's reasonable for travelers and for developer.
Is there the volume of travelers that we need? And then secondly, can we find that approachable asset when we're specific to hostels? Because ultimately, it really comes down to the underwriting of what we're going to deliver to investors. Whether it's a $8 million property here, or whether it's a $7 million, whether it's 20,000 square foot, 10,000 square foot, what we've recognized is most important to us is, does it have the volume of travelers? Is the real estate approachable enough? And then ultimately, can we deliver substantial margins to our investors that we're targeting? That's really what it comes down to.
As you're underwriting right now, are you looking mainly at existing hostels, or are you looking at mainly, buildings as you convert? How do you figure out it doesn't have any underwriting on the basics, what's there?
Yeah, well, first of all, I would say that we have a pretty good idea of, just call it the post-renovation finished product, what we believe based on what the market is telling us from the hostel industry. When we're specifically talking about hostels, we've got a pretty good idea, regardless of if the building is operating as a hostel right now, or if it's operating as a hotel, or if it's operating as an office. We have a pretty darn good idea when we look at what we would configure it to, based on the economics and the market research that we do on travel. We've got a pretty good idea of what it's going to generate, post renovation. So it can look from a risk standpoint. I think when you look at an existing hostel, that's minimizes there's the least amount of risk there, right? You're looking at something where you're going in, it's really about implementing business model, renovation, capital expenditure, but ultimately, pretty much what you got. You've got zoning, you've got usage that's already established, so you're minimizing risk. So if we can wave our magic wand, if we can get something approachable in that fits that, the least amount of risk and time to stabilize, that would be our first look. But then, on the flip side of that, from an opportunity standpoint, we do recognize that Some of these office spaces that have cool structures that set up perfectly for us, the returns on them could be actually potentially the highest returns that we could see.
What do you see in like design layout for rooms? What's kind of trending? What do you guys like to do, for hostel layouts that are cool?
First of all, there's maximizing room configuration, but I think the more important part, and I appreciate Mike saying that about me, but when I really look at, strategically, we can dive into maximizing revenue in the rooms and the room layout, but the room layout doesn't matter if you don't have the experience. Ultimately, when we look at a design, that's been a huge part of our growth and our understanding and how we're intentional about the way that we set our hostels up. Hostels are community-based. However, human nature sometimes, and I think everybody can align with this, when you go into a group setting, sometimes you're like, you want to go and sit with the person you're familiar with. You want to go and, maybe that's uncomfortable to just jump in and start talking story with someone, as we'd say here in Hawaii. So you go to the corner and you read your book or you get on your phone or whatever. So in a hostel, people want that community, but sometimes they need that little soft push, and design can help with that. So when we look at our common area spaces, we're looking at how can we create a space that really brings people together and almost forces people together? Mike uses this as an example a lot. We designed our kitchen, and our hostel consultant said, that's a big, beautiful kitchen, but if you were to shave it down 10% in size, people are kind of going to have to maybe rub elbows a little bit. They're going to get to know each other a little bit more. Instead of creating all this space, let's make it a little bit more intimate. So can you take a space and create a little bit more intimacy? The flow of our hostel, we want to make and force everybody to constantly have to flow through the common area versus providing them outs in these different areas where they can just kind of go and, okay, I don't have to see anybody, I can easily escape. And then what ends up happening is, man, they feel more comfortable then to join karaoke night, right? They feel more comfortable to go and jump on one of those activities that they don't know anybody on because they've met somebody. Hey, are you going to do this or that? Yeah, I am. Now they've done an activity. Now the night's on fire because they already know each other. So people are getting comfortable. And it has this compounding effect where the community gets created by the design. So it starts with the design and the thought, and then it funnels everybody to have this experience together, which then really, really lends well to people coming together and having an amazing time. And that's where the value is. Like, that's where the experience is. That's what they're going to take with them, who they met, the stories that they created along this journey, right? And so that's what we've really done to use design within our space to create that community. Now, once you've executed that well, then it becomes about what Mike said about optimizing every square inch of the room. Like, how can we go based on this area? Who travels here? So what are the room types? How can we maximize getting the most dollar out of the way that we space our room?
I look at your images online, and you guys have, pool tables and foosball and, karaoke stage, and really a place, different from a hotel. Hostel, like, you're going to have that space where you're really hanging out and getting to know the travelers. And then rooms, seems like it's kind of across the board in hostels is what I've seen. Like, you might have rooms like with bunk beds across. I've stayed in hostels where it's just a room, but then you got your own private room, and then you're walking down to a private bathroom. So you're just kind of saving some space in those.
And so part of it is, what is the asset you're starting with, right? What's the layout of the asset that you have? Because anytime that you start to talk about, bathrooms, dollar signs go off in my mind, like, ching. All right, we got to put bathrooms here or there. I'm like, oh, dollars. So if you can work with the asset for what it is and be like, all right, so based on this asset, here's where the bathrooms are. Look, we could increase the bathrooms in that same area versus putting them in suite or putting them in the individual rooms where you got to run infrastructure and create, time and money. We really start with what does the existing asset say? And then let's go and work with that, and we'll balance those two things. We'll balance, all right, well, how much time and how much money would it take if we wanted to put bathrooms in a specific room? If we wanted to add bathrooms, what does that look like? But in our hostels, we have, you're right, we have a combination of private rooms where somebody can go in and, have a queen bed to themselves or with their partner. We have rooms that are private that can sleep up to 4 people. And then we have rooms that have, mixed gender, 4 people. We have female only, which is probably one of our highest demand room types that we have. Solo female travelers is a huge area of organic growth in the hospitality market space. And it's being proven out in our business model. That's for sure. And then we have, mixed and female only 8-bed spaces as well. So we have a combination of those spaces.
Wow. So what I like about Hostel is you're hitting like a travel group that's, far different than just, again, every standard hotel, it's either a double queen or a single king, and you've got, 2 people, and that doesn't really reflect the world as it is. And, that only serves like so many, groups of peoples where, you may have a group of, college kids traveling together. You may have a couple of single, moms that are getting together in a mom group or something that can come and show up, or single, young travelers. And so I like the variety that you're looking at. And I know, or that Hostels opened up for this opportunity. I know you guys also just got back from the Landscape Hotel Unique Stay. And I think I've been to a couple of these type properties where they've had like a mixture. Loge is one. I don't know if you guys have stayed out in any of their hotels, but I've stayed in one in Westport where they have like a hostel, like a surf hostel, and then they've got individual rooms, and then they've got some camping. I think, the opportunity you talked about starting with the asset, of looking at hostels as a component within a larger, landscape hotel or whatever that you might come across is kind of a unique opportunity to serve a different kind of guests. What did you guys learn from Unique Stays and the Landscape Hotel conference that you guys were at there with?
Yeah, I was impressed. I had no idea. There were some of these glamping hotels, I guess you call them. I didn't really know that those existed, and I was blown away by the creativity with some of these. There was a variety. So this event, right, for anyone that is listening and doesn't know what we're referring to, there was a unique hospitality, unique stay event where it was invite only. There's probably about 30 people there. They got invited that represented different aspects of unique hospitality. So we had glamping people, we had Travis Chambers, I don't know what you call that, like some kind of crazy immersive experience in the desert that's like Star Wars. That's interesting. We had people that are like in what's that place? Hocking Hills, Ohio, with like these man-made but like really beautiful waterfalls. So this water feature that you go and you can stay in this forest basically with these amazing waterfalls that are rolling right past your unit, and you can go and swim in the pool. So all these things that are like, well, this is not just your typical Airbnb. There's something special. And then we got invited and we're like, okay, well, what the heck are we doing here? We're the hostel guys, right? Like, why are we at this place? But I guess a lot of people look at hostels as being unique. And to us, we're like, well, wait a second, hostels been around forever, mostly in Europe. This isn't like some new model that we've created, but for whatever reason, it's not as prevalent in the US. And so we brought that to the table. And so we get to meet all these people that are doing all these unique things. And the common denominator, I would say, amongst all of the different, hosts or operators, everybody has a passion and everyone is pouring into their project and making it unique or creative in some way to separate themselves from just a place to stay. It's all about the experience. And some places, look, they're willing to pay a premium for relatively basic accommodations because it's not necessarily the quality of the linens. How do they feel when they're there with whoever they're traveling with, whether it's their partner or their family? How does that experience make them feel? And by curating a Star Wars theme or some sort of immersive waterfall experience, like they're taking back an experience that they feel like it was something very memorable. So for anyone that's out there thinking about what, tree houses and things that they're going to go and say, hey, well, how can I set myself apart? I think it really boils down to, well, whatever you're passionate about, whatever you find that fills your bucket, and pour into it.
Yeah, I will add on to that because where you started with this was you described a property that you had stayed at that has some of these mixed uses. And I've, number one, been approached a couple of times recently with this concept of having some sort of micro resort with different accommodation types, but that are more community focused. I was speaking with Isaac French while we were there, and that was one of the things that he asked me about, was through design, how we were able to bring people together. Because in these experiential lodging spaces, a lot of times when you think about them, you're thinking about, well, I want to be as tranquil as possible. Right. I'm going out to this, lake cabin, this micro resort that has these beautiful views and this really surrounded by significant amount of nature. But I think that there is an opportunity to say, okay, there's a unique shift that's occurred, I believe, over this past decade. When we look at Generation Z, Gen Z is coming up. I think they're the first generation where all of these things are just a part of their life. Co-living, right? Uber, shared space, shared accommodation, and yet they have this deep desire for community because so much of their life is spent with technology where they're not truly connecting. And I believe that what's happening with this is that it's creating this real deep need and desire for community within experiences. And so us as a hostel, that's exactly what we're providing. And I think that's why we're seeing we're seeing such great success right now. The timing is really good. And I think that does provide an opportunity in what you were describing, that concept can be brought to some of these unique stays and this experiential lodging with combination of different assets on the property, but that bring people together.
I love it. Well, Nate, Michael, you guys are doing some incredible work, not just on your projects, but what you're doing with people and really bringing people together and connecting them. I honestly feel like that is a need and a desire that you guys are filling and doing a great job. So I appreciate the good work that you guys are doing. Thanks for hopping on the show today, sharing some wisdom, some of your experience. It's been a real honor to get to know you guys a little bit. Look forward to what the future holds. Maybe we can do some deals together. If you guys are in Denver, definitely give us a holler. Love to connect up with you guys. So if anybody on the podcast wants to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach out, connect, find you guys, handles?
So you can just search online, right? We're on all the socials. You can go to our website. It's the Hotel Investor Playbook.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.